Thanks for joining us on this Sunday morning. Donald Trump is speaking out after his felony conviction and weighing in on possible sentencing outcomes.
The judge could decide to say, hey, house arrest or even jail.
It
How
could.
do you face what that could look
I'm
like?
okay with it. I saw one of my lawyers the other day on television saying, oh, no, you don't want to do that to the president. I said, you don't beg for anything.
That was Trump in an interview on Fox News earlier today. The former U.S. president is now a convicted felon, awaiting his sentencing next month, which will happen just days before the Republican National Convention. On Thursday, a jury found him guilty on all counts of falsifying business records in his hush money trial. Gloria Allred is a prominent U.S. attorney and women's rights activist, and she joins me live from Los Angeles. Nice to see you, Gloria Allred.
Thanks for inviting me, Rosemary.
You've had a couple of days to process this. Give me just your initial reaction to the fact that Donald Trump has been convicted.
Well, I think it was the right decision by the jury, and he was charged with falsifying business records, and that was lifted up to a felony because the state argued, and it was a state case, not a federal case, that Trump falsified the records in order to conspire with others by unlawful means to have an impact on the election. That's really what it was about, was election interference, perpetrating a fraud on the public, not letting them know the truth about his relationship with Stormy Daniels, and I do think it was a just verdict.
You've represented some of the women that have accused the former president of sexual assault, and I should say that Stormy Daniels makes it very clear here that she was a participant in what happened with Trump, that she was not a victim of sexual assault. But what do you think Trump's guilty verdict means to some of the women you've represented? Because there was obviously a power dynamic going on here after they first encountered each other.
Well, I mean, it's all about accountability.
Sure.
You know, former President Trump has been called Teflon Don, that he seems to have been able to get away with so much. And he's had such a negative impact on women. The biggest negative impact, of course, has been not just, the alleged sexual assaults, but his selection for the Supreme Court of anti-choice, anti-reproductive rights justices. And that has had, an effect on women that is going to bring out pro-choice women who will make a big difference in September. They will remember, in November, what he has done with his selection of an appointment of and nomination of Supreme Court justices, because now these justices are not only allowing the states to essentially criminalize abortion, but in addition, half of all of the abortions in the United States, Rosemary, are medication abortions. Yeah. And those are now under attack. And in addition, contraception itself is being attacked by many states. So we are at a turning point, and this conviction is just one step forward. And in terms of motivation of women, I don't think they're going to vote, at least not pro-choice women, for a convicted felon. They're going to vote for Joe, who promises to restore Roe.
Let me go back, if I can, to Stormy Daniels and just the fact that she had to testify in some detail in that courtroom with Donald Trump sitting there. And you have counseled so many women when they make their allegations or cases against men. I wonder how important you think that was in terms of the message it sends to women about standing up to people.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, actually. Yeah. She testified in great detail. She stood up to the defense. She was smart, and she was prepared. She was prepared to testify, and she wasn't going to be walked on. That's the good part. The problematic part is that the prosecution was allowed to go into so much detail about the sexual relationship, which frankly was not really relevant. And that is going to be one of the arguments that former President Trump's defense team is going to use on appeal, because that type of detail was used in part to reverse the convictions in the Harvey Weinstein case, where Me Too witnesses were allowed to testify. The New York Court of Appeals said they shouldn't have reversed the conviction. I have no doubt that that will be one of the arguments that Trump's attorneys will use on his appeal from his conviction, and not the only one, but definitely one of them. They will try to pattern themselves after the language they used to overturn the Weinstein verdict.
Very, very interesting. Tell me about the sentencing. It's going to happen just days before the Republican nomination. I know most people don't believe that he will get jail time, but I also know that the judge is allowed to look at his behavior and make decisions according to that. So what do you think is the likelihood of prison time, or what do you think the sentence could look like?
And his misbehavior, of course, he's been essentially in contempt of this same, of the gag order at least 10 times. He has shown no remorse, which is important at sentencing. He has taken no responsibility, nor do I expect him to take any by the date of sentencing in July. Those are factors against him, and the fact that he is facing criminal charges in Florida, in Georgia, and also in Washington, D.C. on the January 6th. So this is really a unique defendant in that way. He should get what any other person in the same circumstances would get, but the truth is there's never been a former president charged with crime, but no person is above the law in the United States. He could get prison time. I think it is probably more likely that he will get probation, or he may get a suspended sentence. It's really very difficult to say. For one thing, we don't know what the prosecution is going to request. They haven't said. And that is certainly a factor that the judge will consider. He says he doesn't really care about jail time. I don't believe that for a second. But whatever he is sentenced to, he will merchandise that. He will profit from that. He will fundraise from that. That is a certainty.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. The fact that a convicted felon is very likely, or he could still become president. And I hear you that you're not a fan, certainly. But the fact that that's a reality, that he has a good chance of becoming president, what do you think of that, Ms. Allred?
Yes, the United States Constitution does not prohibit a convicted felon from becoming president. There is nowhere that the founders even contemplated that would be a probability, let alone a possibility, that the American people would ever elect a convicted felon. So there's no discussion of that. It is, we'll have to see. I think that the Biden campaign is likely to continue to call him a convicted felon. That's what he is. And so it's a convicted felon against a president who has a record to run on. And, they're both approximately the same age. Even with all of that, it is going to be a close campaign.
It is.
The real question is, are the independents going to be affected by this conviction? Will they decide that this is way too much for them and they just can't vote for Trump? Or will they decide it really doesn't matter, that he's just a victim? Of course, he always plays the role of the victim. He always appeals. And most often when he appeals, he loses. But we'll see what happens in November. I'm going to be in the West Hollywood Pride Parade today, and my entourage and group that is going to be walking with my car, we are going to be the resistance. And we're going to have a lot to say about choice and voting as a weapon of power for women in the November election.
Gloria Allred, always nice to speak with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Let's speak again before the election. I'd appreciate that very much. Good to see you.
I'd love that.
Okay,
Thank
take
you.
good care. Thanks.